Hey, what up? This is Zach Guilford from Midnight Mass, and you're listening to one of my favorite podcasts, Pop Culture Pastor.
Pop Culture Pastor.
So Cody, I'm a little confused because if some young artist went to the Louvre and said, "Hey, I'm going to paint you a new version of the Mona Lisa,"
Okay.
if you were the Louvre, you'd be like, "No, thanks. We have the original Mona Lisa. That painting doesn't need to be redone." Right?
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Pretty sure. We'll stick with the classic. What's important about the Mona Lisa is it's one of a kind and it's iconic. Not that, we could make it better or worse, whatever. And I had the same feeling today when I saw the news that Jake Gyllenhaal and a production company is set to remake Roadhouse.
Roadhouse.
It says it's a reimagined take on the classic movie starring Patrick Swayze for Amazon Prime. And listen, if Sam Elliott's not in this kicking butt and calling Jake Gyllenhaal Miho, then I'm not interested at all.
Ratcatcher 2 from the Suicide Squad is in it.
That's great. Don't care. It's a perfect movie. Why does that need to be remade?
Well, people don't know what Roadhouse means.
And Jake Gyllenhaal's a fine actor, but he's not. He's almost too good. Not to put down Patrick Swayze, God rest his soul. But Patrick Swayze held like this different kind of space in the culture. Jake Gyllenhaal is like serious actor.
Jake hasn't held a space in years, with the exception of being in the second Spider-Man movie.
I mean, I'm assuming Jake Gyllenhaal is going to be the character that Patrick Swayze played.
But looking at the cast, he looked like he'd have to be Sam Elliott's character.
Maybe.
Because
I don't
everyone
like that
is so young in this.
Yeah, I really don't like that then. Not a fan. Not a fan at all. I'm just not a fan. Is Jeff Healey still alive?
No, I don't think so.
Jeff Healey of the Jeff Healey Band? The blind guy that was the house band in the bar? The Double Deuce?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's...
Oh, man. Then this doesn't need to be remade. Like, if you were getting Jeff Healey Band back. But if he's not alive, then I really don't want it. It's Sam Elliott. If Sam Elliott has to be in it, doesn't he? Is Jake Gyllenhaal really going to be Sam Elliott's character?
Well, Sam Elliott died in that movie.
Well, right. I know that. But this is a remake, right? They're just going to remake it?
It would just be confusing if you bring him back.
Why would it be confusing? He'd be a different character now. He's old. Or he could still be Wade Garrett. He could be Wade Garrett and they could just redo the story. I guess what I'm saying is I don't care at all. And I'm going to watch it because that's what I do. Because I feel like I have to because I'm such a fan of the source material. And then they're going to Red Dawn me. Because Red Dawn remake was brutal. So bad.
Don't put yourself through it.
Yeah. What do you think? You're being awfully quiet about it. I need to know where you stand.
So I'm very limited on my Jake Gyllenhaal liking.
Yeah.
Like Donnie Darko is peak Jake Gyllenhaal in October Skies. And then after that, it was kind of a spiral downward. And then there was just some like random hits here and there. I like my Jake Gyllenhaal in small doses.
I guess that's what I'm saying. It's like he's a fine actor. I don't want to take anything away from him. He won a Tony. Did you know he won a Tony?
Give it back.
No, he's a fine actor. But there's something missing, like charisma-wise, that Patrick Swayze had. I mean, Swayze's a legend. And granted, he wasn't the serious actor that Jake Gyllenhaal is. But he was in Ghost. That won some awards, right?
Maybe.
Anyways, this is Pop Culture Pat. Welcome to our podcast. I just had to get that off my chest to me because it's just the most disappointing thing I read today. I just don't know where I am with that and how I feel about it. Other than I don't feel good about it. I know that. I don't feel good. That movie is iconic. It had such great, wonderful character actors in Patrick Swayze. And I think if Patrick Swayze had not gotten cancer, he'd be up there with the likes of guys like Ben Gazzara, who was in this movie, Sam Elliott, a guy who showed up in these movies as these interesting characters. And I just, and I'm looking at the cast. Nah, this ain't it, man.
Well, finally, my cell phone decides to work during this. Yeah, Jeff Healey died like 2000.
Well, when it rains, it pours.
It does.
Now I just need to go listen to Angel Eyes on repeat.
I feel his character's name in Roadhouse might have been Cody.
It is Cody.
Yeah,
You are absolutely correct.
Yeah.
He was Cody. But I just call him Jeff Healey because that's who he was. He's a famous band in the 80s. He was blind musician, and was great in that movie too.
They do perform the song Roadhouse Blues by The Doors. So
very nice.
I enjoyed it.
Welcome to the pod. This is Pop Culture Pastor, and that was just a little bit of news right off the top. We're going to move towards the lobby now. We're going to go out to the lobby to answer listener questions. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Welcome to the lobby.
All right. We are out in the lobby. Cody's got his gross chocolate-covered raisins.
Nature's delicacies.
I don't know what that means. I've got nachos and a very large Mountain Dew. We both have a very large Mountain Dew.
I will say that I know people that go to the movies and hope that they have the ginormous pretzel.
Do some movie theaters have those?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Just not ours.
No, not ours.
Why do we live in such a small town, Cody?
Because that's what's happening.
Yeah. Okay, it's time to answer listener questions. You know, I was only going to do 2 questions. There's another question here that I just saw that I thought we would go ahead and hit.
Okay.
Because I can't speak very long on it, and I don't know if you can.
You're throwing me off.
Jackson Chauncey, who was on our wrestling episode,
Yes.
about the WCW, he posted a GIF of Vince McMahon
Mhm.
and said thoughts, which I'm assuming he was referring to Vince McMahon getting or resigning his position there.
Forced retirement, as
Yeah.
the kids like to call it.
Yeah, pretty much. And I don't even know what to say other than because I'm not really sure. I haven't been into wrestling, current wrestling. And so I'm not really sure what his level of participation is. I am somewhat aware that the WWE has fallen off in recent years and seems to be being overtaken by, is it the AEW?
It is the AEW.
In fact, it kind of reminds me of when the WCW really kind of arrived on the scene and was starting to beat the WWF back in that day. It kind of reminds me of the same thing sort of happening, is that someone else is muscling in. And I guess right off the top of my head, I would just be interested to see what they do under new leadership.
So, my thoughts are with this particular development that Vince's creativeness, I think, was limiting a lot of the talent that was on WWE.
Are you saying that he did that intentionally or that he's not very creative?
I think that the older that he has gotten, the more, I guess, others have caught up and maybe he's limited in that.
Okay. And was he the driving force behind the creative juices of WWE?
He had the final say.
Okay.
And he could squash anything and he could promote anything.
Okay.
And so some wrestlers just weirdly got bumps where others got knocked down a few pegs. And since Vince is out, his daughter Stephanie is now co-CEO.
Okay.
And
her husband is Triple H.
And her husband is now the creative guy behind the matches and storylines.
Okay.
And so I think that you're going to see a lot of fresh takes and some better character development with some of these younger wrestlers. Where before, I think WWE was very top heavy, that they focused on the top, 5 men and 5 women within the sport. And now you're going to see a lot of talent surge up from the lower levels. So.
Okay. Have you been watching? Are you a regular wrestling watcher?
Jackson invites me over for like the paper.
Oh, I see how it is.
And then I get a lot of like random news items pop up on Twitter.
I mean, I know I'm old, but yeah, appreciate the invite. Thanks a lot.
It's
Jackson.
on the Peacock.
Well, I don't care what it's on. I want to watch it with friends. Wrestling's no fun to watch by myself at home. What am I? Young Dave? Depressed young Dave? I want to watch it with people. All right. Let's just move on. That got depressing in her.
It did.
Scotty Walker, our friend Scotty.
Yes.
From Salina. He asks us, what is the best MCU movie? As if that was just a simple question.
That is a simple question. I have a simple answer.
Oh, well, hit me with it.
It's Ragnarok.
You think it's Thor Ragnarok?
Mm-hmm. Because it's not dependent on other movies for its greatness. Where I think with Infinity War and Endgame, you do need all that build up. Because by themselves.
Yeah. Let's stop right there because I agree with you. I think when you're talking about the best MCU movie, it can't be an event movie where a bunch of crossovers are happening. Because those are exciting and fun, but they're really building on other movies.
Yeah.
So it's really you're really talking about the standalone movie that feature one or two characters. So, yeah, I think Thor Ragnarok is definitely a top 3 for me, for sure. Maybe even a top 2 and arguably the best. I mean, I think once you get to the top, it's hard. It's hard to pick
for me.
Pick hairs.
It's either Ragnarok or you have to go with one of the Captain America movies.
Yeah, Captain America Winter Soldier is really, really good. Really, really good, I think. And Guardians of the Galaxy 1 as a complete movie, I also feel like is really, really.
So I go Ragnarok, Winter Soldier, and then Guardian. But there's definitely separation for me between 2 and 3.
I feel like if you watch Ragnarok and then go back and watch Thor Love and Thunder, you'd see a little bit of Love and Thunder for mine. Like if you watch them back to back.
It's not how I roll.
Okay. That's a weird response, but all right. Okay. So yeah, that's, we're pretty much in agreement there. It has to be a standalone movie, like an individual character, not a crossover event movie. Okay. Here, he didn't ask this, but what do you think the best movie of Phase 4 is? So is this even a contest?
We're in agreement that's Love and Thunder.
What? Come on. Are you serious? That's not better than Spider-Man No Way Home.
Well, I mean, if we're counting that, I mean.
It is. Yeah, it's part of Phase 4.
Okay, well, then it goes that one then.
Okay, good, because I thought I was going to have to throw my laptop in.
But if you were going to say Multiverse of Madness, I was ready to go over the top.
Listen, as I've said before, I think Multiverse of Madness and Thor Love and Thunder were both enjoyable. I think they're fun, but I think they also kind of suffer from the same problem, even though it presents differently on the screen, right? It seems to be different problems, but I think it's actually the same problem, and I think it's technical. I think they gave these filmmakers the freedom. They took off the clamps and let them make a movie they wanted to make, and then they over clamped on the editing. I think that's what I'm going with. Because I don't think Taika Waititi set out to make an absurd movie.
Give us the Taika cut now.
That's what I'm saying. I think there's a Taika cut maybe out there that would help it out a little bit. But let's not start that.
Taika cut.
Wouldn't want to get accused of bots. All right. David Allen from Florida. He's from Orlando. He's a good guy.
Home of the magic.
Fellow geek. He says, what do you think video game enemies are doing while you check your inventory instead of attacking? Well, David, I would hope they would be rethinking their decisions in life. Just taking self-inventory, like we're checking our inventory literally. I would hope Bowser was taking inventory of his heart to just say, hey, did I really need to kidnap the princess? Was that a good thing?
So I assume they are either rethinking their decision to enter this battle or they are checking their own inventory as well because they know I'm coming with all the heat.
Are they watching you
Yeah.
watch your inventory? Like is Ganon watching you as Link fiddle through and he's like, oh, he's got that sword. Oh my gosh. Things are about to get hairy. Am I sure about this? I don't know. Here, just take the Triforce. I don't want it. You can have it back.
Pretty much. And I feel that there's been times that they've just have surrendered right after I have checked my inventory.
And you can't, there's no inventory to check in Mike Tyson's Punch Out. But if you press pause, Mike Tyson still beats you up. He still knocks you out cold. Hardest boss of a game ever, by the way. Do you have who's the hardest boss of a game ever? I would say Mike Tyson and Mike Tyson's Punch. Nearly unbeatable.
So
That's a tough one. I sprung it on you.
You did. Because like the toughest boss I think I've gone against is Whiz Pig in Diddy Kong Racing. and it's once you get into space.
Whiz Pig sounds vaguely urinal.
It does. And like, so you can defeat him during the first race, but then like once you do the reverse course, it's like
follow-up question. True or false? Older games were harder than newer games to beat.
I would say true. Also, older games did not have you can adjust the setting.
Right.
Because now kids be going like just the notch above beginner.
They're taking easy street.
They are.
We didn't have that option back in the day. And we didn't have the internet and a bunch of Twitch streamers to tell us what to do. We couldn't watch other people doing it like that.
I will say it is nice these days.
Yeah. All right. Those were good questions.
As someone that plays Skyrim, I do have to look up.
All right. It's time for us to exit the lobby now. I'm going to go talk to Sam because we're going to talk about scary movies on the pod. And I gotta hear what Sam has to say. So Cody, to the geek phone. All right. I'm on the geek phone with Sam. Sam, how's it going, buddy?
Oh, it's going great today. I feel upbeat. My job is now a 32-hour work week, so I'm getting paid more. And I feel like I feel upbeat and ready, unlike the subject I hear we are to discuss.
That's great. It's good to feel upbeat when we're talking about scary movies because some people don't like them, but a lot of people really love scary movies. And I guess what I want to ask you first, Sam, why do we like being scared so much?
Well, it's like a rush. So to speak. It's like a surge in the system. They say that life is funny up close, funny far away, but tragic up close. Now, when life is seen even closer, it's not only tragic, it's scary. And that's what scary movies do. They show that extreme close-up of things. And people are drawn to those types of scary things. People love that rush. It's a surge in the system. People love to jump out of their seat and have their hearts race against their chests. It's a feeling of adrenaline that people can't help but crave.
Wow, that was almost poetic, Sam. You put that so well. Is there a particular type of scary movie? Are you into scary movies? Is there a particular type that you're into?
Well, it's funny you say that because I personally don't get bothered by scary movies because I am told in advance what to expect when I see a horror movie, such as a slasher or a psychological thriller or anything of that like. So when someone gets killed, I'm not saddened or shocked. I say, well, this is a horror movie or a scary movie, so this is what I paid $12 for. But all in all, it's not just really the jump scares that intrigue me with scary films. It's more the idea of it. The idea, for instance, of a haunted house. The idea that something awful and unspeakable happened in that place. We're not sure what it was or what it did or what sort of thing. Was it a murder? Was it a mass murder? Was it a suicide, a mass suicide, some terrible demon that escaped from some portal or whatever? But whatever it was, something awful happened in that house. And whatever happened, that event has now fused and melded itself into the confines of that building, damning anyone who dares spend a night in that place. And people can't help but be intrigued by it. Now, one other thing that really I think can sometimes go link to link, if you will, with scary movies is the mystery itself. The idea of it's what you don't see that is more terrifying than what you do see. Films such as Cat People and The Haunting and the Amityville Horror and Jaws, we don't really see the unspeakable evil that is behind and lurking so much, let alone at all. And yet that's what makes it scary. Sometimes it's the mystery that is more frightening than the reveal.
Yeah, I think that's really good, Sam. Especially here lately, seems like the last 10 years or so, there's been a lot of religious themed horror, and for a lot of people, that's the unseen world infringing on the seen world. But in a lot of ways, it builds the dread of the unseen enemy, right? And
Yes.
what of a lot of the movies I like are psychological in a way where the filmmaker's very good at building the dread.
Yes. And that is very interesting because I believe above all, the master and the king of that psychological thriller is none other than Alfred Hitchcock himself.
Yes.
He was the one who truly mastered that. And the first film actually of his that really gave me the thrill was Strangers on a Train. And the whole thrill of, are they going to get away with it or will they won't? Or North by Northwest, where it's a game of cat and mouse as to see who's going to win, the cat or the mouse. Now, if this were a comedy, the mouse would win, obviously. But in the thriller, you're not sure who is going to win. And therefore, that takes people on the edge of their seats. And and as scary as it is, they can't help but glue their eyes to the screen, wondering what's going to happen next.
Yeah, what was so crazy good about Hitchcock was that, an expert at building the dread and making something that would scare you in that way, and keep you on the edge of your seat. And usually, like his most famous scary film is probably Psycho, and it's not supernatural.
Obviously.
It's not supernatural. It's a very human protagonist, right? Evil, and
yes,
in
kind of
that
about
way,
human nature.
Yeah, maybe The Birds would be the one that he does. That's the most kind of unnatural, I guess, but it's still a natural killer. That they're birds, they're just not acting very unbird-like.
Yes, and what's more interesting is that you don't know why they are attacking. They give you no explanation as to why they are attacking, and that's what makes it frightening. The mystery of it all being more frightening than the reveal.
Hitchcock is one of your favorite filmmakers. Are there any movies particular that jump out to you besides Hitchcock films?
Oh, there are a few Italian horror films, which are called giallo films. Now, giallo is the Italian word for yellow, which refers to these yellow paperback books that were very popular in Italy that were, as you say, horror or thriller novels. And the directors of these behind there, particularly Mario Bava and, of course, the great Dario Argento, really captured both thrill as well as the aesthetic look of it. Their films are very poetic in the way they are portrayed, Plus, it has a killer soundtrack in it. If you listen to a lot of Dario Argento's soundtracks, it kind of has a bit of a disco theme to it, which was very popular actually in Italy. Personally, when the kill comes, I don't know whether to jump out of my seat here or jump off my couch and start to boogie.
That's good stuff. Sam, I love talking to you because you are a much more well-cultured cinephile than we are, than Cody and I are. And so, I wouldn't have even thought to talk about the Italian movies, but Dario Argento, is a very famous director in Italy for sure, but worldwide known for those horror movies you're talking about.
Yes, indeed he is. But the horror films that I like are ones that have a good aesthetic, are ones that have a really good aesthetic to them, such as the classic monster Universal films, such as Dracula and Frankenstein and such. And as corny as it sounds, there is a beautiful aesthetic to them. And also it gives the creatures a more human quality to them as well. You look at Boris Karloff's Frankenstein's monster, which is actually the real term. Frankenstein is not the monster. It is the name of the scientist. He is simply called the monster or the creature. But you look into his eyes and there is something human in him. And just those subtle emotions in Karloff's face give him an almost human feel to him, as if we are the creature himself.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, I think you're supposed to think. And I love the subtle imagery in some horror, especially monster horror type films like that. I've always said that the zombie genre itself is actually a very good social allegory based on how humans treat each other. We consume each other.
Yes. And now I'm, for one, am not a fan of those types of films because they're just too dreadful for me, too depressing for me to watch sometimes. Just this hopeless, suffocating dread. But I can understand why people are drawn to those things.
Yeah.
People are, to those existential dread sort of feels. People are drawn to that bleakness. They love the idea of uncertainty, the thought of venturing into that unknown expanse, the thrill of not knowing what is going to happen next. And that's what people, and so many people crave that idea. Regardless of how dreadful it is still a rush and a surge that people can't help but be drawn to.
That's a great final thought there, Sam. I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much. It's always nice to talk to you about movies because, like I said, you're smarter than us.
Yes. Well, sometimes everyone loves a good scare.
That's true.
People love a good scare. It's a nice, fun rush.
Yes. Let's go. We're gonna talk some scary movies ourselves here in a second. We'll talk to you next week, buddy.
Well, you have a nice one, my friend.
You are listening to Pop Culture Pastor.
He's always got some great information.
Sam knows all.
And Sam just sees the entertainment industry and cinema and movies on a deeper level than I do. So I just appreciate the way he looks at it all.
I am like Andrew Bernard when Jim and Pam are watching that movie with him that has Jack Black in it.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, he's like, evidently, I would not be a good film critic because I would just say, I don't understand this, but I could rate muffins. This muffin is good.
I'm just imagining Andy Bernard as you now.
Great.
We need Ed Helms to play you in the movie they make about Pop Culture Pastor later on.
I'm here for it.
That would be wonderful. Who would play me? Is it King of Queens? It's King of Queens. Isn't it? That's what I was afraid of. That's what I was afraid of. He'd have to get bigger though. Probably he'd have to put on some mass. Because he's clearly a character. He's a serious actor.
He is. He did play that like neo-Nazi in that newer movie.
Did he really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's some range.
You didn't see that coming.
No, I didn't. We're here to talk about scary movies, the Pop Culture Pastor movie that's definitely coming at some point.
Yes.
Would not be scary, but we're here to talk about scary movies. And I didn't want to put a limit on this. I think we're going to go kind of around the spectrum of what scary movies can be, like different kinds of scary. But I wanted to start off
scary good.
Yeah, I wanted to start it off talking about like what makes a scary movie for you, Cody. What movies, what kind of scares are the ones that give you the most frights? Like, what are the ones when you go to bed at night after having watched the movie, you're feeling a little nervous about?
So when there is religious or cult themes going on, sometimes if it's done correctly, like you question, should I have watched that movie?
Yeah.
And then also like the ones that slowly build and then like happen, and it's something that could happen in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones that will make you think when you shut off the light, like, should I invest in a nightlight?
Yeah. Yeah. I will say that the monster movies, like the old traditional kind of scary movies where there's a killer or a monster, those aren't the ones that usually scared me. No. Although one of my scariest of all time will be one of those. But more so like what you're talking about. First of all, if you're of faith, if you're religious and you believe there is an unseen world, then anything like demonic, that's kind of scary. Because you understand there's maybe an element of truth to that sort of thing could like maybe happen. Like The Exorcist. I think if people don't know that The Exorcist is kind of based on some like real life accounts.
Yeah. I mean, loosely.
Very loosely.
But,
yeah.
And then, what are those new movies about Ed and Lorraine?
Ed and Lorraine.
Yeah.
I don't know. I also, there's a certain kind of scare to me that is worldly, like a worldly scare. Like if it's a pandemic
The
movie.
Conjuring. The Conjuring series are about Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were paranormal investigators and also had some religious training as well.
Okay. Yeah, movies that really affect me, like pandemic movies, like Outbreak. I remember after I watched Outbreak with Dustin Hoffman, like that movie really affected me. The Stand, the movie, the miniseries, The Stand, when I first saw it and when I read the book by Stephen King, that was something that affected me greatly. So those movies and any movie where there's building dread.
Yeah.
Any movie, so there's a movie I'll reference here in a little while where I'll come back to that, but there are some filmmakers who are really good at building dread.
So I will say there's been only 2 movies that have legitimately shaken me to my core, where I was actually like either scared or worried or whatever. One of them is
this is a great segue. Are these your scariest movies?
Well,
or no, these aren't traditional horror movies.
So one of them's traditional, one's not.
Okay,
but I won't reveal them yet. But
all right,
I will say one is from my childhood, and then one is literally just a couple of years ago. So, but otherwise, like I really don't have a reaction even during like jump scare movies. Like it's not for me. Like if it's a good story, I'll enjoy it, but I'm not going to be creeped out. I know there's people that are worried, like after watching Jaws, and I'm like, yeah, that's not.
Oof, man, I forgot about that one. But that was one I saw probably a little too young. And I was pretty sure taking a bath, I was going to get eaten by Jaws. I was afraid of taking baths when I was real little. Yeah, I forgot all about that. I blocked it out. Thanks a lot, Cody.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm with you. The jump scare monster movies aren't the ones that get me anymore. It's more of the psychological horror scares, worldly things that could really happen. The ones that get to me now. But let's talk about, I wanted us to list a couple traditional horror movies that scared us the most. Just like your traditional horror genre type movie. And first for me was a movie called The Gate, which you're probably not going to have ever heard of. It came out in 1987.
That's made up.
The only person you may have heard of is Steven Dorff was in this movie as a child actor. And this movie is, here's the synopsis. When Al and Glenn's parents leave town for the weekend, this was an 80s thing, by the way. We left children all alone all the time back in the 80s. It was just a thing. When Al and Glenn's parents leave town for the weekend, Al uses the opportunity to throw a party while little brother Glenn and his friend Terry decide to explore a hole left by a tree removal service in the backyard. When unexplainable phenomena begin occurring, Terry, with the help of his extensive heavy metal music collection, comes to the conclusion that he and Glenn have accidentally opened a gateway to hell. Came out May 15th, 1987, made $13.5 million at the box office. And you can actually see it right. It's available to watch on Netflix. That I didn't know. I don't know if I want to watch it or not. They had little claymation demons, little stop motion claymation.
So like you're kind of describing some of the plot to Poltergeist though.
Yeah, there was some similarities for
because
sure.
there's a tree that then falls down and
yeah. This one, although it's similar and it's not similar. So Poltergeist, is Spielberg has a big hand in that, and it's got like some of that humor. So it's genuinely scary. Is Poltergeist at times, but there's enough humor in it to offset it. Whereas this movie gets a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes. And frankly, I'm not really sure how that happened. This is not a good movie.
I like to think young Dave voted.
But it did scare me as a little kid that watched this because I was 11 when this came out. And this movie was on HBO all the time, like during the day, because they didn't care what kids were watching back then.
And who is letting young Dave watch HBO early?
Listen, it was the 80s again. This is how it was. And this movie features little claymation demons that come out of this hole in the backyard. They hide under his bed, which is already a sore point for most kids. The monsters under the bed. So that was all kind of freaky. They hide in his closet. It's genuinely kind of scary. And then, they're demons from hell.
Yeah.
Which, that's kind of frightening for a kid. And I remember that this movie legitimately scared me when I was a kid.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Bravo.
What's one of the scariest traditional horror movies you've seen?
So I'm going to say this.
All right.
You're going to laugh.
Say it.
And
why? I'm not going to laugh. When have I ever done that?
So this movie came out in 1949.
Whoa. Is it Christmas Carol?
Almost.
Listen, that one, the old Christmas Carol legitimately was frightening at points too.
So it features a one Bing Crosby.
Oh my.
It is the Disney animated classic, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Oh, did young Cody have a bad experience watching?
So like throughout the movie, like you fall in love with Ichabod Crane because he's the new schoolmaster, and everyone just loves him except for Braun. Braun doesn't. So then Braun tells a scary story, and then Ichabod's going back home, and he knows he has to make it across the bridge, because if he makes it across the bridge, the headless horseman does not have his powers. And there's like this huge dramatic chase scene with like over the top music, which whoever did the music for this, bravo. But so what it does is so brilliant. It builds up all this suspense during the chase scene, and he gets to the bridge. And as he's crossing the bridge, you see a flaming pumpkin go towards him, and then it's like pitch black. And then it goes to like the townspeople never see him again. And so you don't know if the headless horseman got him, if he went to a neighboring settlement, because this happens in like the 1700s, or what. So it's a mystery. And so it becomes a fear of the unknown at that point. Yeah. And usually during the chase scene, as it's going to the bridge, as a kid, like, mind you, I mean, I'm like preschool, early grade school.
It was a cartoon. Like, why did we think this was okay for kids?
Like, I would pull the covers over my head so then I wouldn't see. But yeah.
First of all, let's talk about this for a second, because I'm here for you classifying this movie as a traditional horror movie.
Thank you.
But it's a Disney cartoon.
It is. And like at times early on in the movie, Bing Crosby says and does some funny things with his narration. And like as an adult, you laugh at it and you're like, oh, this is great. And then boom, it just becomes a scary movie. The last 15 minutes, traumatic.
I think this is why we're so hardcore.
Yeah.
Kids these days, they're soft because they didn't grow up with the scary stuff like we did.
Indeed.
That's a great choice. And I hadn't thought about that movie in years.
It's on Disney Plus, by the way.
Is it really? Ooh, I might have to watch that one with the kids.
Like it has Mr. Toad before it. And so you got to watch Mr. Toad, which isn't scary. Seems like a weird pairing, but
yeah, I'm here for it. This movie is maybe the scariest movie I've ever seen. This movie legitimately did give me nightmares when I saw it. Came out in 1984. Johnny Depp's first movie.
Jonathan Depp.
And the movie is Nightmare on Elm Street.
That's a classic.
Wes Craven's classic slasher film. Several Midwestern teenagers fall prey to Freddy Krueger, a disfigured midnight mangler who preys on the teenagers in their dreams, which in turn kills them in reality. After investigating the phenomenon, Nancy, played by Heather Langenkamp, begins to suspect that a dark secret kept by her and her friend's parents may be the key to unraveling the mystery. But can Nancy and her boyfriend Glenn, played by Johnny Depp, spoiler, no, Johnny Depp cannot help. He dies. Can they solve the puzzle before it's too late? Johnny gets eaten by his bed, and then blood pours out from the bed like a fountain and fills up the room from the top down.
It's really epic.
It really is kind of an epic scene. This movie, I watched this movie at a babysitter's house. The babysitter watched it in my presence, and man, so this just for clarification, I'm 8 when this movie comes out, and again, that sounds like it would be grounds for never using that babysitter again, but they were family.
So young Dave kept getting to watch all the movies.
Honestly, this was a regular babysitter for me. It was a cousin of my mom's, so therefore like a second cousin to me. And often my mom I would spend Friday nights over there. And because my mom would go out, she was a single parent, and she'd go out with her friends sometimes, and we would watch Friday Night Frights, which was like the cheesy, scary movies that were on like network television late Friday nights.
My wife come every October.
Yeah.
That's what is happening in our household.
And so I remember watching this over there and just, oh man, this was the only movie, I kind of look back at the 80s and I joke about it. And I think it made us tougher. This is the one exception. This was the one where I look back and I say, I should not have watched this movie at such a young age. It's really psychologically scary. So Wes Craven did this amazing thing where he combined like the psychological horror of you're trapped in a dream state. There's nothing you can do to get away from the monster. So on Friday the 13th, you could just run away from Jason. You could try. They usually didn't. They would be like, let's hide in this closet. No, don't do that, you idiot.
And I mean, the same with Halloween.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mike Myers.
You can run away from Mikey, or you can try to hide.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do either. I don't know what you do because evidently you can't kill him.
So the genius of this movie and this story is that it adds a layer of psychological horror to it. And oh man, there was even a creepy little song the kids sang. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your door. They would jump rope because I was back when, Double Dutch was thing.
Yeah.
5, 6, grab your crucifix. 7, 8. I don't remember that part, but
I kind of wish Leah was here because she would sing along with you and would then tell you what 7 and 8 were.
Yeah. I don't remember that part, but yeah, I this is where totes respect for your wife and her horror fandom. But yeah, that movie scared the nerd out of me. Only cost $1.1 million to make, made $57 million at the box office back in 1984, which for a horror movie, that's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. Do you have a second traditional horror movie?
Okay, so this isn't my all-time scariest movie, the one that I watched as an adult. So this is not it. I will save that for a later segment. But traditional, going with traditional. I'm going something that's it wouldn't be a classical horror movie, but it fits within the scary realm, I guess.
Okay.
It's more of a thriller, and it's a psychological one.
All right.
Vertigo.
Ooh.
Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
1958 with James Stewart.
Jeremy Stewart.
And Kim Novak. So,
wow, yeah. Yeah.
I will say there's a lot of Hitchcock movies that I think capture like a really good formula of how to do suspense and do it well, because there's such a build up, and then there's this climatic moment where like everything comes crashing together, and like it kind of takes you back, even though when I'm watching Hitchcock movies, it's not till I'm a teenager, and literally I've seen great graphics. I've seen all the Halloweens and all the Friday the 13th and all those sorts of scary movies. And I'm like, this is so much better.
Well, and we'd be remiss, since we're mentioning Hitchcock, if we didn't bring up Psycho.
Oh, yeah.
Which is one of the scariest movies of all time, recognized as such, and with a non-supernatural threat.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a crazy serial killer. And yes, again, Hitchcock makes that super, super scary.
And I will point out that in the hit song from the 80s, I always feel like somebody's watching me. He says that showers remind him of Psycho too much.
I always feel like somebody's watching me. Michael Jackson's in that song.
Yeah, which is so weird that we don't like give him any credit in the song, although he's like the chorus.
Yeah, well, okay. So there's an interesting story behind that. If you let me take a side note here.
We're going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's Rockwell is the artist, and he's like, I think he might be the grandson of Berry Gordy.
I thought he was the son.
Is he the son? Maybe he's the son of Berry Gordy, who's the head of Motown.
Mm-hmm.
And so Michael Jackson, he just says, hey, Mike, why don't you do the background vocals for my kid's song here? Now that song was a huge song.
Oh, yeah.
But he never really did anything else that people really dug.
Cody's calling him a one-hit wonder.
But talk about what an amazing kind of weird thing to have Michael Jackson, the king of pop, as your background singer.
Well, I think he grew up with Lil Mikey.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is nobody remembers the verse when Rockwell was singing. They just remember the chorus where Mike was singing.
Yeah. I mean, I am lucky enough I was able to pull out that Psycho reference. So.
Yeah. And because he had it was almost like a rap sing. He was like, I'm running the head, you know. Yeah, it was really weird the way the verses went, but yeah. Anyways,
so anything Hitchcock, really.
Yeah,
Vertigo just happens to be my favorite Hitchcock movie, closely followed by Spellbound. But I'm a Gregory Peck kind of guy.
The Birds. I remember seeing The Birds when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
That was sort of freaky. I mean, yeah, if you're talking scary movies, Alfred Hitchcock is on Mount Rushmore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he deserves to be there, but only from the side profile.
Yes.
Okay. Next category. A scary movie outside. Oh, actually, I have an honorable mention for traditional.
Okay.
Because I'm gonna classify this as traditional because it had a main monstrous kind of killer in it. I'm gonna say The Ring.
Okay.
The Ring, coming out of Japan, but like the American movie studios redid it, and it really kind of revitalized that sort of horror genre. It led to a lot of they tried to adapt a lot of Japanese horror, which didn't always work out, like The Grudge and all that. But The Ring, I remember seeing that in the theater and being genuinely scared at times. I'm like, ooh, this is kind of scary, especially when the guys in the apartment in Zamara, is that her name? Something like that. She walks out of the TV, like kind of crawls out of the well on the TV and then into the guy's living room. Yeah. Genuinely scary stuff.
Another random side note, in one of the Halloween episodes for Community, Jeff and Annie are supposed to go as a boxer and a ring girl, and she dresses up as the character from The Ring instead of like a boxing ring girl.
Community is an amazing show.
Oh, yeah.
And we should do a whole episode of the pod on that, just so we can point out that for our radio show, we did a jingle one time.
We did.
Yeah. Dave and Cody in the morning. We totally stole it from Community, Troy and Abed. But all right, scary movie outside of the horror genre. Do you want to go first on this one?
So
This one, I was just thinking something like that wasn't a horror movie. It could be sci-fi, could be comedy. I don't know.
So I think maybe, and again, I'm going with a film director because I think a couple of his films would fit within this category. But I'll go Signs by M. Night.
Yeah. So there's some genuine moments in Signs that are again. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this right after you, but boy, does he build the dread well in that movie.
He does. And, I mean, literally, up until you actually see the creature and find out that they showed up to a planet that's 70% water and they're allergic to water. Up until that point, you have some legitimate suspense built up. Mm-hmm. And it's good. And again, you can go with a couple M. Night movies that I think he just does that very well. Even though with the ending, you might not like it because it's a twist, and usually his twists are either, I'd say at times they're kind of childish. Some of his movies, but then some of them are like, oh, yeah, I did not really see that coming.
Well, this twist works for me in Signs. I'm going to say it works. Because what I'm going to say is I think Signs, first of all, is his best movie. I think Signs is M. Night Shyamalan's best movie. I think it all works, and I think it's all because of the premise. So the premise is large-scale alien invasion of Earth told from the point of view of a small town farmer, basically. He's not a farmer, but you know what I mean? He lives out in the country. And so it's very small scale, but that plays into the dread because they're following. So like there's a shot of the brother watching TV, like on a fuzzy with rabbit ears.
Oh yeah.
In the closet. And so you're getting bits and pieces of information, but the dread's building because they don't by and large know what's happening in the larger world.
And Mel Gibson's kids were so weird.
It was a great cast.
Oh, yeah.
Great cast.
They nailed the casting. And once you get the backstory of Mel Gibson's wife dying and like a bunch of other things happening, Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, Joaquin is great in that movie.
Yeah.
But they're all great. Mel Gibson is wonderful. And I know, we don't like Mel Gibson as much now because he hasn't been very nice in his older age, but oh man, the fact that he's just sort of lost in this, that he's like consumed with his grief, too consumed with his grief to even really deal with the events of the outside world.
Oh yeah. Cause like for most of the movie, he is not helpful whatsoever for his family that's going through this crisis.
And really what snaps him out of it is running into the guy who accidentally killed his wife in a driving accident.
M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah, the M. Night Shyamalan, and that delivers one of the best jump scares I think I've ever seen with the reflection of the knife under the door. Amazing. That's just I'm here to say it. Best M. Night Shyamalan movie. Signs.
So there's like 3 or 4 to choose from, and I think I go Signs, but you could convince me Split or Sixth Sense.
That's a great pick. A great pick. I'm also gonna go the Aliens route and say Aliens, the sci-fi movie. Came out July 14th, 1986. Here's the summary. After floating in space for 57 years, Lieutenant Ripley's shuttle is found by a deep space salvage team upon arriving at planet LV-426. The Space Marines find only one survivor, a 9-year-old girl named Newt, who delivers one of the best lines of the movie. They come out at night mostly. But even these battle-hardened Marines with all the latest weaponry are no match for the hundreds of aliens that have invaded the colony. This is another one of those movies, Cody, where boy, the buildup of dread in this movie is so amazing. Directed by James Cameron.
The Cameron that you could get upset with.
Yeah, so this is the guy. I like this James Cameron, the guy that directed this movie and the guy that directed Terminator 2. This movie is so good at building the dread in a way where you're introduced to these space marines and they're all awesome. So Bill Paxton, Michael Biehn, they even Private Vasquez is like a Latino woman, and she's like one of maybe the baddest. She's the one with like the biggest gun, but they're all impressive. And the dread is they're just getting slowly closed in on. And so there's a scene near the, oh man, I would call it if everything keys on this one moment in the movie, it's this scene where they're kind of in the middle of the complex on this planet that used to be a colony. And they're kind of in this central room and they're kind of trapped in it. And they've got like these detectors that are detecting movement. And they're counting down like how far away they are. And pretty soon, and the noise that's making in the back is like ding, 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 ding. It's like helping to build the dread till finally they're rattling off where they are. And someone points out the obvious. How can that be right? They'd be in the room. And then they all look up and figure out that they're in the ceiling. Man, dude, I'm going to tell you that movie as a kid freaked me out. Wonderful, wonderful movie. And then, once all the Space Marines are pretty much decimated, it's just Sigourney Weaver, Newt, and the android guy, and Sigourney Weaver being a boss. Just a boss in that movie. This is where, we remember Sigourney Weaver as being awesome. And she gets in the big industrial exoskeleton thing and does battle with the alien queen. And it's just a wonderfully done movie. At that point, it becomes like sci-fi superhero stuff. But boy, for most of the movie, the dread is just ratcheting up constantly. And so that would be my scariest movie for me outside of the horror genre. All right.
Okay.
Two, if you have them, two scary movies that you think redefined the genre.
That movie that came out in the 90s.
That's a lot. There are a lot of movies.
There are a lot of movies. You're correct. But the one that redefined the genre, The Blair Witch Project.
Yep. We've got our first same.
Yeah.
Our first same of the day.
Found footage films take off, and there's so many bad ones.
Oh man, I know. It's so played out now. So it's hard to explain this one to someone young, to someone like who's 25 years old or younger, to say that this found footage one was freaky deaky. Cause it was. Do you know there's legitimately people that still think this was a real event?
So by the time I get to watch it,
right.
It's been out of the theaters and it's like you can rent it at your Blockbuster or family movie rental place, and all the cast appeared on MTV's
right. I remember that
award show. And so, but before this, there was a lot of people like, no, this is real. Literally, they found this footage in the woods. These people are still missing.
You guys have to understand, the internet's still pretty new at this point.
Yeah.
And they used the internet. This is the first movie to really use the internet in a very intelligent, smart way, coupled with the fact that this is the first found footage movie ever made. And it just works. Man, does it work. This freaked people out in the theater. People would run out of the theater crying because we'd never seen anything like it. So a lot of people couldn't process it. Like, hey, this is entertainment. They filmed it in this way.
Yeah. And I mean, this movie launches so many other like series of movies, which they did make a sequel to this, and they shouldn't have.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
then
but you knew they were going
they
to.
made-
Listen, this movie cost $500,000 to make and made $250 million.
And it launches another franchise, Paranormal Activity.
How many paranormal movies? How much activity and movies accounts for it just becoming normal activity? Because how many movies are there of that now? 6, 7?
Oh,
that's just normal activity.
Which, I mean, when it first came out, it was, I think, made by a film student and his girlfriend or another film student, and they made it relatively cheap again. I don't know how much that one grossed.
I'll look it up.
Literally, again, found footage, and there were people that legitimately thought, oh my goodness, this is evidence of real paranormal activity. And then, like, oh no, this is some kid from like UCLA.
Cost them $15,000 to make. Like for a movie, that is like garage sailing.
Yes.
$15,000 made $193 million. Like, do you understand? That is like winning the lottery.
It is.
That is unbelievable.
And they can thank the Blair Witch.
Yeah, because I can remember watching Paranormal Activity. Well, first of all, I watched the Blair Witch Project, and basically it's found footage, video footage, tells the tale of 3 students. And in the footage, you get that they've traveled to a small town to collect documentary footage about the Blair Witch, a local legend murderer type thing. And over the course of several days, the students interview townspeople, and then they go out into the woods, and that's where it kind of takes a frightening turn. And that movie was, I was genuinely like kind of freaked out watching that movie. Paranormal Activity comes out, and I know it's still something a little different, but that one didn't affect me nearly as much as Blair Witch Project did.
No. And if you watch the extended cut of Paranormal Activity, it kind of becomes a comedy. It gets funny.
Yeah. So, I agree. That was one of the movies I was going to talk about for redefining the genre. The second movie, I'll just jump to my second movie. And that would be 1996's Scream.
Oh yeah, that definitely. Oh my goodness.
So
launches another group of franchises.
By the time Scream comes out, the traditional horror of the 80s has died. We've had all our Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, like Jason in space. Like it just becomes a parody of itself. And boy, the genre was just really dead. And then Wes Craven comes out with this movie with a bunch of young people, which you were used to in the traditional horror movies. And it's set up like a traditional horror movie, except for the fact that you find quickly that it's tongue in cheek. They're messing with all the tropes of a horror movie, and the characters are in on the tropes.
Mm-hmm.
There's even a character in the movie played by Jamie Kennedy who's like, hey, to survive a horror movie, we got to do all these things. And then they don't do all those things.
Exactly.
And so they're kind of in on the joke, but it was genius and it was funny, but also genuinely frightening. I would pose to you that opening scene with Drew Barrymore.
Oh yeah. And Drew Barrymore is like the big name in the movie. It's between her and Neve Campbell.
Yeah.
And literally you don't get that much Drew Barrymore.
No, she gets killed immediately at the beginning of the movie. And that was kind of a recurring. So Scream does the same thing, comes out with lots of sequels. Mm-hmm. Each one gets worse and worse and worse because it starts to miss the point of what made it so special.
Yeah.
And I understand when things make money like this, like here, this one made $173 million, cost them $15 million to make. So again, huge money making movie. And of course they're going to make sequels. But man, this movie was so good. And again, a supernatural threat. Like it turns out to be a crazy high school kid and his buddy. who are the killers in this movie, and they seemed supernatural, but it was because they were working in tandem, and they all the whole time you think it's one killer.
Mm-hmm.
Spoilers.
Spoilers.
But yeah, really, really, really good. Neve Campbell kind of is huge in this movie. She had been in Party of Five, I believe, was the TV show she was on.
Yeah, I nearly said Dawson's Creek, but I'm like, nope, it's Party of Five.
Yeah, she had some mild popularity, but this is what makes her kind of a star. Although the interesting thing about Neve Campbell is she makes a couple big high-profile movies, but then she kind of goes away for a little while. She's one of those people that seems content to just resurface every once in a while, make a movie, make some money, and then go away, live her life. Courtney Cox and David Arquette meet each other on this movie and get married eventually.
The world didn't make sense at this point.
Skeet Ulrich, who everyone thought was going to be the next Johnny Depp. Spoiler, he wasn't.
Maybe for the best.
And one of the most unsung, like Jamie Kennedy even rises to some level of stardom because of this movie. But you know who the unsung hero of this movie is? And I'll say it, Matthew Lillard.
Shaggy,
yeah. He's like, he gets kind of buried in this movie by the other people, but I think he's the best part about the movie. And he's the one of these actors, this list of people in this movie that I have enjoyed over the course of his career the most. I think he's great. Just great. Did you have another movie that redefined the genre?
Well, before we move off Matthew Lillard, I will say, if you haven't seen 13 Ghosts, treat yourself. He does a great job in that one too. Another of those scary flicks.
Okay.
But
not 13 Monkeys.
No.
All right.
No.
Not the time travel thriller.
No. I guess one that I would go with might be probably The Exorcist. Because you then get some serious, again, like focusing on the supernatural, religious imagery, and it is somewhat believable. Yeah. Where you don't have like a serial killer, you don't have a ghost or a monster. It's something is inside your daughter, and evidently she can kill an old priest and spit out like pea soup.
Yeah, well, and again, boy, what makes that especially frightening is, right, if you have any sort of church background, it's playing on things that you believe are real. There's an unseen world where demons are a real thing and angels are a real thing. And there's this unseen battle that's happening. And every once in a while, this unseen battle will infringe on the human world. And so then you get this real kind of redefining of the horror genre in The Exorcist. What's amazing about this to me, Cody, is for years, no one really, it does redefine the genre, but no big budget movies really try to do it.
No.
Like, there's some smaller movies, like I mentioned The Gate, which kind of played on those themes, but really everyone stays away from that. It's not until recently, the last 10 years or so, where they've really hammered the kind of religious undertoned themed scary movies that The Exorcist maybe started and really tried to play on that. And they've made some scary movies.
They did.
So it did redefine the genre. I think it took Hollywood a while to figure out, oh, this is frightening.
It is. And I mean, there's so many movies that have borrowed from the template, and they've made so many sequels. And an honorable mention to The Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah.
Because I love the way this one ends, just because they couldn't make a sequel from it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say a name, and it's going to bring about a lot of feelings. Joss Whedon is one of the writers on it, and he did not want to leave. It opened for a sequel. So him and Drew Goddard sat down and made it a world-ending event. But this is also Chris Hemsworth's
Yep.
breakout role
That's
that
right.
gets him a connection to Marvel Studios. And then we get the best Marvel movie, Thor Ragnarok, many years later.
Yeah, what's incredible about this movie is it like redefines the genre in a way where we're going to pretend this is a horror movie, but it's not.
It's not.
Not at all. And you find that out, and it's one of those switcheroos. It's like the opposite of From Dusk Till Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
You remember the movie From Dusk Till Dawn?
Yeah.
Done in jointly by Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez. And the movie starts off as a Quentin Tarantino-esque crime thriller about two criminals, and then out of nowhere turns into a horror movie when Rodriguez takes over.
Oh, yeah.
But this does the opposite. Starts off horror, turns into like weird political thriller type thing into the world, but it's man. It's not. It's
Slash comedic undertones throughout.
Yes. That's a good pick. I'd forgotten about that movie. That one's worth it. I need to maybe rewatch that one. It's been a while.
There's some scenes that I laugh way too hard at.
Let's turn our attention to scary TV shows, series, miniseries, etc. made for TV movies. Stranger Things comes to mind immediately. That was one that we've talked about a lot recently because it's been in the public consciousness. Does a great job of pulling together the nostalgic vibes of 80s horror and the 80s genre. A lot of different 80s genres, really.
Oh, yeah.
But never, and has a lot of comedy, has a lot of feel-good moments, but doesn't lose the scariness. Like there's genuine jump scares and things like that.
So there's 2 series on Netflix, and I think that they both are great in capturing the horror genre.
Mm-hmm.
And it's from the guy that made Midnight Mass, but it's The Haunting of Hill House and The Haunting of Bly Manor.
Yeah.
And they're great series. Like, genuinely, they're so. Leah and I are watching, I think it's The Haunting of Hill House. And there's a scene that, like, it'll make you jump. And it startled our dog so much that he started, like, growling, and, like, he had his hair standing on end. And I'm like, well, at least you know when to be scared, Kylo. At least you know when to be scared.
I will say Midnight Mass is another one of those movies where the guy that made that expertly ratcheting up the dread slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Like just through the course of each episode, the dread just is slowly building until when it finally breaks, boy, does it break.
The crescendo.
It just overflows in the just craziest, wackiest, horror-iest way.
And if you haven't watched Hill House or Bly Manor, treat yourself.
Yeah. Watch those. And if you've watched those, and if you watched Midnight Mass, we did an episode on Midnight Mass. I think it was episode number 2.
It was early.
Of the pod. So go back and listen to that if you haven't, because we had a lot of great things to say about that one. Yeah. So those movies, that's a good choice. I'm going to mention, this is, okay. This will kind of be the tail end for me. This last movie I wanted to talk about. And it's a psychological scary one. It was not a horror flick per se, but it's a movie called The Day After.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Shutter Island.
No. The Day After was a made-for-television movie. Like, I just want to point that out because this was back in 1983. Cold War is still going on. And this is like the first like real post-apocalyptic kind of thing I see as a kid. And I remember it was an event. It was filmed largely in and around Lawrence, Kansas. So like it was doubly scary to see things that I was familiar with in a nuclear war setting. So the summary is this. In the mid-1980s, the U.S. is poised on the brink of nuclear war. This shadow looms over the residents of a small town in Kansas as they continue their daily lives. Dr. Russell Oakes, played by Jason Robards, maintains his busy schedule at the hospital. Denise Dahlberg prepares for her upcoming wedding. And Stephen Klein, played by Steve Guttenberg of Police Academy fame, is deep in his graduate studies when the unthinkable happens and the bombs come down. The town's residents are thrust into the horrors of nuclear winter. Cody, this was one of those events where, like, you know how they used to say on TV is like, this is an episode or this is a film your family can't afford to miss. Remember that when they used to do that on TV commercials?
Hopefully they said, this is one your children should miss.
No. This is the way they marketed this was everyone's got to watch this because this is like what could possibly happen to us any day. And for a lot of us, like, you know, when you're living in the Cold War, there were people who were petrified of this. And then to see it play out, John Lithgow's in this movie, JoBeth Williams, Amy Madigan. There's a ton of people in this movie.
All the people.
And it freaked people out, Cody. This was scary stuff. I mean, it just, I can't even describe it. But the sirens, one of the iconic scenes in this movie is a woman who's a wife, stay-at-home mom on a farm. She's hearing sirens go off. I don't know how she's close enough to a siren to hear it, but she does. And she walks out and all these missiles are flying up behind her in the air because there were all sorts of nuclear missile silos in and around the rural Kansas, Nebraska areas, right? And so, man, that picture really stuck with me. And this was a movie that was just really in my consciousness for a long, long time. Long time. And freaked me out big time. Premiered on ABC back in 1983. They warned viewers before it premiered that the film contained graphic and disturbing scenes. And they did encourage parents who had young children watching to watch together and discuss the issues of nuclear warfare.
Jabronis. All you need to do is duck and cover.
They had 1-800 hotlines with counselors standing by for this movie.
Okay.
That was part of the production. 38.5 million households, or an estimated 100 million people, watched the day after on its first broadcast, a record audience for a made-for-TV movie.
Okay. That's a good one.
It was a big deal.
So as far as series, I will go Are You Afraid of the Dark? Big series on Nickelodeon when I'm growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually, like, had some decent stories. I'll give it that. Now, I do have 2 movies to close out anything I want to say, just because I haven't gotten to my, like, scariest movie of all time.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then the random movie you haven't heard of that if you really like scary movies, you need to watch it.
Yeah, this is like just bonus material.
Yeah, I'm giving out all the information.
Hit me with it.
Okay, so we'll start off with the scariest movie I have watched, and it was with my wife, and I will set the scene. We drive to Pittsburgh, Kansas, which is an hour away, and we go into their theater. We watch this movie. After the movie ends, literally, Leah and I walk to our vehicle because the theater's in the mall. We walk across the mall, walk out into the parking lot, get into the vehicle, haven't said a word to each other. It isn't until we have gone a little ways down the road and we're by a cemetery that I finally speak up. And I'm like, I think we need to go to a church. And literally, I have not watched this movie since. But
that's a special kind of scary.
Like, I kind of want to go back and watch it just because I don't know if I'd have those same feelings because it was just like that initial hit. But it is called Hereditary. Now, I will say this is not for all audiences. There's also like weird, like old people nudity in one part. And I'm like, ew, put on some clothes.
This is like a 9 Inch Nails video.
It is. But when the matriarch of the Graham family passes away, her daughter and grandchildren begin to unravel cryptic and increasingly terrifying secrets about their ancestry, trying to outrun the sinister fate they have inherited.
Ooh. Yeah, I heard there was some pretty extreme reactions, but never saw the movie.
So that one was really good. Midsommar,
Oh yeah, that's
it was made by the same people.
Okay.
And like everyone's like, "Oh, if you were terrified of Hereditary, wait till you see Midsommar." It wasn't that scary, but Florence Pugh did a great job in it.
Oh, I'm a Florence Pugh fan.
Yes.
Yeah, she's my favorite.
And then I have my bonus movie. This is one I almost guarantee you haven't seen unless you just are like my wife and will put on a scary movie just because you're bored.
All right, I'm excited about this one.
Okay, so I will tell you who is in the cast. There's one big name.
Okay, hit me with it.
Ted Levine.
Oh, wow, that's was he the guy in Married with Children? Is that Ted Levine?
No.
No, not as the neighbor. He's not Jackson.
No.
Is Ted Levine? He was an '80s guy, right? Is he in '80s stuff?
So he's in Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, I'm thinking of the wrong guy.
And he's the chief in Monk, if you watch TV show Monk.
Yeah, not much.
Okay, well, Ted Levine. Okay. So
what is this? I'm curious.
I can't remember if it's found footage or not. If it is found footage, it's the best found footage scary movie ever. But an investigative journalist, Anna, looks into the disappearance of her friend, who she believes ingested a secret government chemical. Her search leads her into the disturbing world of covert operatives, with one strange radio transmission troubling her. So there's like a lot of conspiracy theory stuff that happens around it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they end up in the middle of the desert and like just chaos ensues. And like it builds the suspense and keeps building and then crescendos. And then, it ends perfectly.
What's the name of it? What's the name of it?
It is called.
What's the name of this treasure?
It's called the Banshee Chapter.
Oh wow, never even heard of it.
Again, you should not have heard of it. It literally, so like on IMDb, it only has a 5.4, but then on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 74%.
Oh wow, that's weird. That's pretty.
I think if you are a fan of the genre, you will love it.
Okay.
You're welcome.
All right. Special bonus category. A horror movie that you saw that was ridiculous and actually disgusted you. And why was it The Hills Have Eyes?
And that has Ted Levine in it.
Does it really?
He's the
Show me a picture. Who's Ted Levine?
Okay.
How come I find his name familiar, but I can't think of who it is? I can't.
It's him.
Oh,
yeah.
He's a character actor. Yeah, I've seen him before. Okay.
I mean, again, he tells...
A little frightened that you knew that he was in The Hills Have Eyes.
Oh, no.
That movie made me physically angry by the time I was done watching it. I hated that movie so much.
You are not married to Leah Havland.
I felt like The Hills Have Eyes, because it was big budget, it made it worse. Like it was a real studio offering.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just like, I felt like every choice they made was lowest common denominator. Right? It was all low hanging fruit, and I hated it. Just hated it.
Ted was Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs.
Oh yeah, right.
It puts lotion on the skin, or else it gets the hose again.
Stop it.
But literally, like, so if you want someone to be in your horror flick, get Ted.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good stuff. Man, there's so many good movies we talked about in there. Kids, if you're listening, get mom and dad's permission before you try out any of these movies.
Because so many of these movies are R-rated, except for maybe one of the scariest animated movies of all time, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. You can watch that on Disney Plus. And
listen, I'm just going to tell you, your parents are better than our parents were. I love my parents, but back in the 80s, they just let us watch too much.
Yeah.
We just weren't aware of it. They just weren't, we weren't fully aware of what was going on. So if you're a youngster listening to this podcast, don't seek any of these movies out without parental accompaniment.
You're welcome.
Because scary movies are fun, but they're for a certain age.
Mm-hmm.
What's your favorite scary movies? What is your favorite scary movie outside the horror genre? Which movies do you think redefine the genre? These are the conversations we really love to have about cinema and about movies and TV. What's the scariest TV shows you've seen? Let us know on our social media posts about this pod, and we'd love to have conversations with you. Other than that, thank you for joining us. Make sure and subscribe and rate and review the podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Adios.